Welcome to the 69th edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman, joined by Scott Beck. Special show here. This is the NCAA bracket preview show. First time we ever get to do this as a sanctioned women's championship. Scott, when I look at it, I know it's traditional to start in order to go through, but there's one opening round matchup that supersedes all other opening round matchups, 124 pounds. Iowa's Callie Lang versus McKendree's Shelby Moore. Both are All-Americans. Shelby Moore is a returning national finalist. She plays fifth in 2024, second last year. Shelby Moore has a 2-0 record against Callie Lang, but they've been competitive at some level. What do you think about that opening round matchup between those two powers that could be going for the team title?
First of all, Callie Lang is very tough, and, she's a gamer. Shelby Moore is very good. She's had some ups and downs, but she's zoning lately. She's really been wrestling well. So in a very tough weight class, Shelby Moore gets a 4 seed, which is, but then again, Xochitl Pettis got the 3 seed, who's only, a U.S. Open champion, wrestling Final X. So it's a tough weight class. If you're Shelby Moore, it's like, oh, gee, thanks. My reward, for, wrestling great in the last 4 weeks and be, really looking good is I get the 4 seed and then I get pulled into Callie Lang. If you're Callie Lang, you're like, how am I not seeded? They only seeded 8. She's not seeded. She does have a bunch of losses this year. She has 7 losses. So I don't know what their formulas are. It doesn't seem unreasonable that she wasn't one of the top 8 seeds. But personally, I think they should seed to 18. The men seed to 33. If you can only have 18, seed to 18, because I don't think that's fair. Callie Lang would probably be if they were seeding. It's debatable whether she should be top 8. She probably should, but if she's not, she's probably 9. And to have Iowa and McKendree going out in the first round, and it's not fair to either of them, but it is what it is, and you got to beat who's in front of you, right? And and if somebody's going to lose, whoever loses has to wrestle on the backside with a vengeance,
And regardless, you look at the first round match between the 5 seed and unseeded Linda Holman. Linda Holman of Western New England. And by the way, Western New England sent 8 to the national tournament, so they had a monster regional. I don't think that's a gimme by any means for Blasco, but if it goes to seed and holds that way, you have Blasco against potentially Lang or Moore in the quarterfinals. So what did we talk about last time? These other schools are going to dictate what happens with these programs. So no matter what, Grand Valley State is a trophy contender, and they're going to dictate possibly which team wins the title. I know North Central wants to win it too, and they could be in there as well. But if you're looking at McKendree versus Iowa, Iowa versus North Central, McKendree versus North Central, all of these are going to play a factor. And when you have a power program like Grand Valley State that's going to possibly be going against Iowa or McKendree, in the quarters, those things matter. And by the way, the top 4 seeds have all reached the national finals at some point in some division. Sarah Sterner wrestled in the national finals last season at 131. Virginia Ford redshirted last year, was in the national finals in 2024 when it was 123. Shelby Moore, as we mentioned, the 4 seed, was in the national finals last year. And then you have Xochitl Pettis as the 3 seed for Quincy. She was in the NAIA finals last year at 131 in that monster bracket that was 4 to 5 deep. And you had Carolina Moreno going for her 4th title, and she got 4th place. So that just shows you how deep it was last year. But you have 4 national finalists as your top 4 seeds. But you go on the bottom side too, Scott. Virginia Ford has no picnic. If she wins her first match, you likely have Loriana Paestawa, who made a U20 world team, as the 7 seed. She didn't wrestle because of injuries. But these aren't give-me matches by any means.
It's just a tribute to the growth of the sport that the brackets, for the most part, are very deep and very solid with landmines everywhere. And if you're Mota Pettis, it's kind of funny where, okay, so you won the U.S. Open. You've made it, she has had moments of being flavor of the day, heir apparent, next superstar, because she's fun to watch and she opens up, sometimes to her own demise, but she can just hit some insane stuff. When she wrestled Alex Hedrick, who was a U23 world medalist, U.S. Open champ, multiple age group world team medalist, and in the U.S. Open, she literally took her down launched her and gutted her and teched her in about 15 seconds before Hedrick knew what hit her. And Hedrick's tough to score on. So she leads the NAIA at the death bracket, which had all these, Nigerians and really good accoladed people, and came, the NCAA, and this is the stacked deep bracket as well. I personally, and maybe I'm getting over my skis, but I think Motapez is solid favorite in this way. Sarah Stern's done a great job. It was a good move for her to drop down to 24. She's had some great wins, but some of them have been, funny wins. Headlocks, losing, throws. She's got great arms and great headlock. She goes big. Shelby Moore's got to stay away from that. That'll be a very interesting match. I think that match is going to be a good match, close match. Shelby Moore's wrestling really well, but so Sterner. The bottom side, I like Virginia Ford a lot, but, I don't think she's at the level of a Xochitl Mota-Pettis. But Mota-Pettis has had some down matches. But when she's on, she's on. She's experienced. She's wrestled a lot more seniors, accoladed seniors. She pinned Allie Reagan. She's been around the block. And until proven wrong, I have to go with the experience and the savvy seasoning. But she does, every so often, she does some very sloppy things, but I think she might be too much. I'd expect her to come through the bottom.
And by the way, remember at one point she wrestled Helen Maroulis in a delayed Final X, and there was thought or sentiment because Helen Maroulis was injured and going into that Xochitl Mota-Pettis may have given her some problems just because of her unique style and that you don't know what she's going to do. She said that, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't prepare. I just go out there and feel the wrestling in the moment, which is dangerous for these wrestlers when they go and face her.
The bracket is really interesting to me. Is 31. This is really some crazy storylines. You have Cam Guerin, who's a 4-time national champ, has battled injuries. She is a gamer. She's taken losses in previous years to like Janiak, and then come back and taken care of her in the finals. But this is a different Lexi Janiak, who's beaten senior world medalist. She's very seasoned. She was in Final X. And then you have Aubrey Krazer, who's beaten multiple senior world medalists this year. Is very tough, very physical, good at moving forward, taking people to the edge, and very good, and stingy. Doesn't give up points. She tries to fight through positions. And if you're Krazer, the thanks she has for being, 22-0 and wrestling and winning senior tournaments is she's got a former looked at as a young prodigy, Janaida Garcia, who was at one point she was the number 1 ranked high schooler in the country, I believe, and she's a 7 seed. She's going to have to hit her. I expect her to take care of business there just based on things. And then you have Yali Acox, only a 2-time finalist, and Yanyak will hit her in the quarters. But and then you have Carly Brooks, who came through as a starter in a room that had a bunch of good 131s. Bella Williams had a very good year. Carly Brooks got the nod. And, I expect Cam Guerin to be able to take care of business against Brooks. But Brooks has had some, pretty solid moments. So this is a stacked weight class where, maybe 6 through 9 or 10 aren't. There's some weights that are deeper. But 1 through 5 are, it's a very difficult, interesting weight class to me.
And what's interesting, too, is that it's not necessarily about the returning All-Americans or returning national champions because Aubrey Krazer is a freshman, Carly Brooks is a freshman. So you see this new crop coming in, but we just know how good they are and what they can factor into this weight class. But when you do have a returning 4-time national champion in Cam Guerin going for a 5th, you have a returning national champion in Lexi Janiak, it just adds the old with the new. And that's what makes this a unique weight class.
And the funny thing is the concept that you're saying, Lexi Janiak is the old. I still look at her as the new because, she's relatively new, but is very accoladed, very experienced, and she's very savvy. I'm sure she's happy, or Guerin is. They're not hitting each other early, but the thanks for being on the other side of Guerin is you've got to hit a Krazer who's on a mission. So this is to me the solid. If you look at the top 4 seeds, this is the most solid weight class for sure. And then just the concept that Yearly Acox is a two-time runner-up as a sixth seed. It's insane. This is just a testament to how quickly this is, growing and developing.
110, 117 also stand out to me. If you had to pick the deeper one, which one are you going with, Scott?
The deeper one, I'm going to go with 117 for sure, for the deeper one. It doesn't mean there's not talent at, 110. I mean, you have Yu Sakamoto as a number one seed who, has had her moments of looking phenomenal and it has some perplexing moments. Riley Rayom as a three seed has looked really solid. She's very physical. Carissa Turmoil's a two, very tough. And then you sit there and you say, okay, what's Yu Sakamoto's thanks for being the number one seed on her side? She'll have Brianna Gonzalez, who's only won the U.S. Open and, wrestled in Final X and wrestled Felicity Taylor very tough and beat her, in the Open as a five seed. So that's insanity that Brianna Gonzalez, I know she's had some injuries and it's not been her best year, but the talent is there. And if she's healthy and ready to go, she can give anybody trouble, including Sakamoto. The way, we could sit there and say that it seems like the team tournament is going to be between, Iowa and McKendree and, and North Central have something to say about it. But it's these other landmines. There's just so many people that can affect this tournament, from whether it's Lehigh, wrestles like a Crazer or Jimenez that are going to take people out. There are going to be high-level people that are going to get taken out in this tournament. I promise you. This is not going to be a chalk tournament with seeds.
If you look at a potential quarterfinal match, you have Alex Weitzman from William Jewell. She's going against a returning two-time All-American in Ecart Galumet from Delaware State. Galumet was with Campbellsville, then transferred to Delaware State. So let's just say it goes to the seeds. You have Weitzman against Gonzalez. Weitzman won the last time. It was at the For Her Duels. And they grew up together in the same club and were coached by William Jewell's head wrestling coach, Desiree Ramos. So they know each other intimately well. You'd have two club kids going against each other to potentially decide a team race because you have Yu Sakamoto on the top side. So much at play at 117 and how these seeds are breaking down.
What this does, though, these smaller brackets, right, the 18-person bracket, there's no, for the most part, maybe there's a couple of weak conferences that maybe the three isn't that good, but for the most part, there aren't that many, and especially because they only seed 8, so they randomly draw everybody else in. It's game on early, and everybody's pretty good, so there's no walks in the park here, and especially, again, to reiterate that, where you only seed 8, you could have a borderline. Maybe they could have been the 6 or the 8, and they didn't get seeded. And next thing you know, the number 3 seed might have them in the first round, and they're in a battle. And you also don't know what the weight cuts are for some of the higher seeds. In a perfect world, these large brackets, if you're a high seed, you're banking on having some weaker opponents in the first round or two to get your legs under you. If it's a tough weight cut, and that's gone. This is game on immediately.
And to your point, Nohea Moniz, Sacred Heart, she was drawn in. She wrestles Riley Rayom in the first round. Moniz has beat Yu Sakamoto last year. That was her first win of the season, or first loss of the season for Sakamoto. And then you have Kylie Tabaldo, who is tough for Grand Valley State. Abby Cooper has had a solid season. She's the 6th seed.
The 6 seed's 23-1. It's crazy.
She has one loss in the season. It was to Harley Hiller, which was the backup to Brianna Gonzalez. She wrestled in the Iowa duel versus Lehigh. So you have that situation. She was up in the match and then got pinned, but who cares? That's a big win for Harley Hiller.
These are accoladed people. She's a 6 seed, I mean, well, it's hard to complain about that when Brianna Gonzalez is a 5 seed. I mean, I don't think we thought a year or two ago that when we finally had our first NCAA tournament, we'd have a Final X person or U.S. Open champ, whether it's Brianna Gonzalez as a 5 seed or, an XMP as a 3 seed. I don't think we thought that this landscape was going to get this solid as quickly.
And you look at the top, again, we're just talking about how it's competitive. Jenna Anderson from Presbyterian, she got drawn in against Yu Sakamoto. definitely not handing that to Yu Sakamoto. Sakamoto, of course, the favorite, but Jenna Anderson was competitive going back and forth against Sage Mortimer when Mortimer was up at 117 at the national duels. She has a unique style, has really good hips and feel for the sport. So I could see that being an interesting match if you get in the wrong position. Maybe Jenna Anderson pulls
And
something.
as you know, Sakamoto gets in the wrong position. Puts herself in the wrong position many times. She is a free wrestler, too free, in my opinion, but puts herself in danger a lot. But it's good enough to win a U23 world title and beat a lot of good people. When she's on, she's on. But even the matches that she dominates or wins sometimes can be a little crazy and sloppy. I would just have nightmares if I was the coach.
110 pounds, I think, is just as deep as 117. We can break down why. Audrey Jimenez is your one seed. She is the returning senior world teamer. She is a six-time age level world medalist, 5 silver medals and 1 bronze medal. She has been the class of the field all season long. And looking back, Sage Mortimer, the 2 seed, she's the returning national champion from Grand Valley State. She's dabbled at 117, dropped back down to 110. She actually won the first outing against Audrey Jimenez. It was on a FloWrestling card. And then the last time they wrestled, it was 10-6 at the Olympic trials in 2024. I believe Sage got a 4-point move to start the match off. So as we talk about just being competitive, long way to go to get to the finals, but if it holds the seed, that's what it would look like. But of course, everyone's circling that possibility of the 4 and 5 seed going against each other. Nyla Valencia, the 5 seed for Iowa, Gabby Tedesco, the 4 seed for McKendree, and that would be a rematch of the Missouri Valley Open where you had Tedesco was down 3-0, pulled it out late. So that is completely winnable for Nyla Valencia.
Yes, I mean, that could go a long way to ultimately determine the tournament. Perhaps, who knows? On the other side, Keilani Schufelt is when she's on, and when she opens up, she's dangerous. And Sage Mortimer, will not take her lightly. I promise you. And Sage is somebody also who wrestles freely, and I love watching her wrestle, but at times puts herself in precarious positions, and Schufelt, is really good. So this is a very interesting weight class as well. And, to the top 5 seeds, I mean, I obviously, on paper, you got to say it's Jimenez is to lose, but, Mortimer, I like Mortimer at this weight class rather than 117. I think it's the right weight. And, I hope they get in the finals. I look forward to seeing that.
Tegan Sibbles wrestled exceedingly well this season for East Stroudsburg, so Sage Mortimer doesn't have an easy path to get to the finals. Tegan Sibyl, if it holds, you'd have her against Sage Mortimer in the quarterfinals. Chloe Deerwester is the 6 seed for Presbyterian. She could go against Keilani Schufelt, and she has a win against Schufelt earlier this season, but Keilani Schufelt has pulled away later this year. But then you also have in that 3 matchup in the opening round, Emily Mendez from William Jewell was an All-American last season. Just a lot of things that could fall apart here. So no gimmies at 110, Scott.
For the most part, there aren't that many gimmies in this tournament. I mean, there is, obviously some big favorites, Blades, Welker, Jimenez, but I think everybody's got a lot of work to do, and it's you win a title in this tournament, you've earned it.
One of the interesting pieces of the 103-pound bracket, you have the 1 seed is Heather Kroll from McKendree. The 2 seed is Val Solorio from the University of Iowa. Neither are returning All-Americans. Of course, Kroll is a freshman, but Val Solorio was at 110 last year. They sent 2 to nationals, and Val Solorio was on the outside looking in, dropped down to 103, and has done everything she needed to do to make that spot against a loaded room where she had to outpace the returning 3rd place finisher and 4th place finisher. Sterling Diaz was in the weight bracket, and Rhiann Murphy. She had to outpace those 2 and made the team. So you have 2 wrestlers as the 1 and 2. in a bracket that has 6 returning All-Americans. It just seems like it could be Kroll versus Solorio, but Ray Sagoon from Grand Valley State will have a lot to say about that. She's wrestling well at the end of the season. Mia Zuniga is a returning All-American. She has Payne Paris from Sacred Heart in the first round. She is a returning All-American as well. We're losing a lot because of graduation. We had some wrestlers, the returning national champion decided to retire in Olivia Shore. You have Iowa being deep. You have North Central was deep. You had 2 great wrestlers from McKendree. This is what's left. 103 is an interesting bracket.
It seems fairly likely that this might go chalk to the finals, with Kroll and Solorio. I think the one thing that the one edge I think Solorio has is that she is battle tested, as you alluded to. She's had to work hard for this spot, whether it's wrestle-offs, tournaments, and she's had a lot of big time matches and a lot of competition in that room. So, but Heather Kroll is very good, and I think this one might go chalk. And again, it's just we keep saying this about every match, but all these potential things, or if somebody gets taken out by a landmine along the way, these are all have massive team implications. I will be, who knows, maybe we're just morons and we'd be dead wrong, but I think this is going to be a very tight team race with a lot of momentum swings within that. All of a sudden, a higher seed goes down and you think, oh my God, this just ruined the tournament. And then somebody else goes down on, the team that just had the advantage, So I think there's going to be a lot of drama, hopefully.
And then you have the 5 seed Maddie Avila from North Central. She was a national champ in 23, 3-time All-American.
She's really good. 5 seed.
Yeah, 5 seed. So it does show you how deep it is. Now another deep one, because I think everyone was running away from Kylie Welker. 207 pounds ended up being a really good weight class, and we've praised that throughout the course of the season. Tristan Kelly, the returning national champ, is the 1 seed. Sabrina Noss, who went 4-4 with her in the duel, 4-4 in favor of Tristan Kelly. She is the 2 seed. And then you have Katja Osteen as the 5 seed. Rira Chababo from Wartburg. She defeated Katja Osteen in the regional, so she's the 4 seed. And then you have Caroline Ward from North Central as the 3. I think this will play a big factor in the team race as well.
Yeah, it should. And again, the concept that, Iowa isn't sending a 4-time returning finalist, it's crazy. But I guess internally, whatever they saw or wrestle offs, I don't know how it was picked, but yeah, I think, how Osteen does may have a lot to do with, I keep saying there's so many things that can determine it, but it could come down to, how well does Osteen wrestle and where does she finish,
180 pounds, it just seems like when you talk about 160 and 180, it really does just seem like it's teed up for Kylie Welker at 180 and Kennedy Blades at 160. If you just look at these as a whole, this is really where Iowa can make a lot of points by dominating, getting to the finals, winning in the finals, dominating in the finals. I look at both those and I just say Iowa, and there's nobody else that can contend. Unless you see something I don't, it just seems like it's Iowa all the way.
I don't. And if I'm Coach Chun or Verbeek or Mayeb, I'm literally saying to Welker and Blades, go out there and get Texan pins. I don't care. Get them because you can and do it. I mean, 160, and who knows if it's just random or people avoiding the weight. But I mean, other than the fact that you have an Olympic silver medalist in the weight class, it's a weak weight class in general. And when I say weak, I don't mean that these aren't good wrestlers. I mean, in terms of just depth and accolades, relatively weaker than some of the other weight classes. And, this is Iowa has to get big points from Welker and Blades, big bonus points. They have to.
145 pounds, 1 seed Riesler Mendy. She has been perfect all season. 2 seed is her nemesis, Bellamere. Love the storyline. Bellamere was at the University of Iowa, transfers to North Central. They met in the semifinals last year, met in the national duels this year. They are 1-1 in college. they are in a collision course. This is set up for that to happen. And talking about team implications and what could happen, nothing would be bigger than those two in the finals, but there's going to be a lot of big matches that have to happen before that can take place. Zoe Lintz comes to mind there as the 3 seed. She has one of the best throws in the game. She can throw almost to anyone. Top to bottom, it just looks like Reese Larramendi and Bellamere. Seems like they're in a collision course, Scott.
Yeah, and their matches are great, and sometimes the scores in those matches are a little deceiving because, like, Larramendi had the pancake at the end of the match, but it was a really close match, and Mir was, going for a, attack like she should at the end. It'll be the one I'm curious to see how she does up at this weight class is Kuznicki from McKendree, and that could have team implications. Does she place high? Is she gonna? Do I expect her to take out Larramendi up at 145? No, but she can place. She can place third. She could third, fourth. I mean, she's very good, and she has good technique. So that could matter. What kind of points does Kuznicki get? That could determine the team race. I mean, obviously, probably everybody on the planet wants to see a Mir Larramendi match, and they're good matches. They're fun matches, and we like them both a lot. So, we'll see how that one goes, but interesting.
Larramendi has a tough path, though. In the first round, she has a returning All-American, Nicole Moore. And then Maddie Kubicki is the 8th seed from Presbyterian. She's made an age-level world team, and she wrestled Larramendi close in the duel earlier this season. So Larramendi didn't get an easy path to the finals, and she has her work cut out for her.
Yeah, I think Nicole Moore wrestled in the U23 World Team as well, so that's always a fun first round match. I don't think anybody does, though. In general, it's kind of like a theme through many of these brackets that the high seeds don't necessarily have the best paths. But I would expect in this case, I'd expect the experience. But yeah, Kubicki's really good. I mean, Larry's got a tough draw. I think she's the class of the top side of the bracket for sure, but she has a tough draw. And I think, some of these athletes would love nothing more than to push her and test her.
138 pounds, our final weight class to break down. Katie Lang is the 1 seed. She is a 2-time national champion. Claire DeCunio won a national championship 2 years ago when she was with King University. Haley Jaffe was a national finalist last year, lost to Lang, but also won the last meeting against Lang. She is the 3 seed. And then Lily Luft, who made that push late. She was an All-American 2 years ago. Now she's back in the lineup. She is the 4 seed. What do you see here, Scott?
I mean, I think, Lang and DeCunio, but Jaffe's wrestled really well, and we DeCunio is just very difficult to wrestle because she wants you to get a leg. She's just very long and very good with tilts, exposures. She's just very tough to wrestle, and she can go with anybody. Jaffe's look great. And Lang, is very solid, very consistent, but she has taken losses. To me, a couple, and we don't know. We had one comment, online I saw about the Lily Luft situation where we don't know if it was a wrestle. Somebody said, was Sky Reelan injured? She had, she's dangerous, with her arm throws, but I don't know what happened at Iowa, whether Luft, beat her in wrestle-offs, whether it was injury. I don't know. But, I think, this is going to be most likely. I don't see, I think it's DeCunio, Jaffe, or Lang most likely. But, the other one, Kylie Rule is very tough as well as a 7 seed, and she's pretty experienced. So it's a solid. This is solid at the top, this weight class, and they're all kind of like just savvy kind of brawlers, and they've been around the block. They're experienced.
Scott, can we count on you to watch the NCAA Women's Wrestling Championships on March 6th and 7th?
1,000%, dude. 1,000%. I'll watch the men's too, but not as much as the women's. I care more about the women's tournament. This is going to be exciting. This is the first one, and I think it's going to be an interesting tournament. So I'm going to reiterate what I said last week. If you are within driving distance and you have a daughter that likes to, if you're a fan, go. But if you have a daughter that's younger, high school, junior high school, just getting into wrestling, I beg you, take them. It is a great experience. It's a great venue. It's a great little area. And this is going to be phenomenal. And I think it's incumbent upon the wrestling community to support this first tournament.